Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's free live training. Today, we are debunking some chronic pain myths and sort of talking about the results of that poll we were doing. I guess it was mostly today and yesterday. I think I threw a couple in last week, but I'm so glad that you all participated. It's really fun for me to see, one, what people are thinking about their pain, but honestly, two, how answers to these questions have changed over the years. Because I think 10 years ago, when I would ask people these same questions, the knowledge just wasn't there. The myths were so much more alive than they are today. And I think that really tells me that some of this really critical education is reaching the masses. My hope is that through their traditional appointments or that they're finding them in non-traditional ways. So thank you so much for joining me today, whether you're joining live or catching the replay. Just for those of you who are new to my world, I'm a trained clinical psychologist. I have a specialty in chronic pain management, and I'm board certified in biofeedback. Um, I share that because I know the chronic pain space is saturated with so many coaches and people who have a lot of great information but may not have the same dedication or years of training to back that up. So I do make sure to share that. And I sort of left the traditional model of practicing so that I could reach more women on a larger scale and provide more chronic pain education to the world. And I've spent a lot of time with women who have pain, listening to them, hearing their stories. And I've tried to hone in on the education that I think is most critical for women with chronic pain. So my focus is always how to help women understand their very real pain, how it works, what is happening in their bodies, what the heck is happening in their bodies, and what to do about it. And I do this so that they can have a foundation to get back to the things that they love, to reclaim that joy, vitality, and sustained productivity that they often lose over years of chronic pain, but being able to do this without being controlled by their flare ups. And today we're going to talk briefly about some of the most dividing myths or the most dividing questions about chronic pain. And these are some of the polls that I posted over the last couple of days. And I chose this topic today because I know that so many women want to understand their pain. But after years of seeing provider after provider, sometimes they just wonder if they just need to accept the mediocre results that they've had. And I know that I can help people understand their pain a little bit better so that they feel more empowered and able to do the things that are helpful for them. And so I always have it. So if you see me looking down, I always prepare for these lives. I have notes in front of me. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat, whether you're live or replay, because I do monitor these, and we can just dive in. And so I think in terms of the questions that were involved in the poll, I think that often the answers that we think are correct for these are pretty reasonable. It's a pretty reasonable conclusion sometimes, these answers that we come to. And that's because in the traditional medical setting for chronic pain is often approached in sort of an outdated way. Most medical schools don't have chronic pain education embedded in their curriculum. And so maybe the culture of treating pain has left people miseducated about how to approach their pain in a really complete way. But let's just dive into the questions. So the first question, or one of the questions that I posted, these may not be in order, was that pain occurs as a result of damage or injury to the body. And the answer is false in the sense that, you know, it's more complicated than that, right? So it's important to talk about the difference between acute and chronic pain here. Acute pain usually comes on suddenly, is caused by something very specific, it's sharp in quality, and it doesn't usually last longer than 6 months. Often healing time takes place prior to that 6 months, and it goes away when there's no longer an underlying cause for the pain. And chronic pain is pain, obviously, that is ongoing and usually lasts longer than 6 months. And this type of pain can continue even after the injury or illness that has caused it has technically healed or gone away. And some people can even suffer chronic pain even when there is no past injury or no apparent body damage or something that anyone can find on their scans. But pain signals remain active in the nervous system for weeks, months, and years sometimes. And in the case of chronic pain, if the brain perceives that part of your body is in danger or vulnerable, then it will protect it in any way it can. And this may become a problem because usually it's protecting us with pain. Our neural networks that produce pain become more sensitive when pain persists. And so when pain persists, it doesn't take much to make it hurt more. Damage or injury to our body is just one part of that pain picture. Pain is a conscious experience that is based on many complex processes, as well as biological, psychological, and social factors. So, not just the sensory information or the physical stuff happening in our body. And the brain evaluates the input that's coming from the damaged tissue or injury and draws on its own evaluative ways of processing to decide if we need pain, to decide if it needs to protect us with pain. And the reason for pain basically is to motivate us to do something to protect our body. And sometimes we may need that, and sometimes we won't. So sometimes we need that because we have a broken arm, right? But sometimes we don't. If our brain is protecting pain and we've just been in a car crash, if we have too much pain, we can't remove our children from the car that's burning up in a fire, right? So our brain is going to decide when and how much it needs pain to protect us in that moment. It can be a little bit tricky. And pain is not very good at being a physical damage meter, but that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to present the need for action, right? And the action is to protect ourselves. So when the brain is satisfied that enough has been done to get tissues out of danger, then it stops making the body part painful. So if pain is lower, it shows that the brain's perception of threat to the body has reduced. So when the question is pain only occurs as a result of damage or injury to a body, pain can happen in all kinds of reasons and go away when it feels like there's no reason to protect. So it's not necessarily as a result of damage or injury to the body, especially after 6 months. Most often it's because there's a component of the nervous system that's now involved in becoming the brain and nervous system becoming overprotective and producing more pain than it really needs to protect you. Okay, the next question. Oh, this one's tricky. So daily activities such as climbing stairs, vacuuming, dishes, running errands can dial down pain. Now, the most reasonable, I think, response to this, especially if these things cause you pain, is to say, no, this does not dial down my pain. But actually, it's true. But I'm going to give you a little nuance for this. It is true that daily activities can dial down our pain. They can ease pain by blocking pain signals to the brain. Activity also helps lessen pain because we're stretching stiff and tense muscles instead of staying still and resting all the time, which can cause more tension, more stiffness, more deconditioning. Because then when we're deconditioned and we try to move, it hurts even more, right? And obviously, these kinds of activities can cause some pain in the short term. Perhaps that's due to jumping into them after a time of inactivity or pushing through instead of pacing it. But research has found that when people modestly increase the intensity of their lifestyle activities, their pain goes down and their physical functioning increase significantly. Now, what this means and how to do it differs from person to person. So yeah, if you've been laying in bed for a few months and then you decide to get up and rake leaves, that's probably, that's probably going to cause you a lot of pain and is not going to dial down your pain, right? But with some nuance here, with a way of approaching it differently, a certain way of pacing it, a certain way of inserting these things into your day, they actually can be utilized to not only dial down your pain, but you can build them up so that you're able to do them more easily. And I help the women, this is probably most of what we talk about in my program, in my Breaking Through Pain program, is how do we do the things we want to do without flaring up our pain? And I get into the nitty gritty of this in their daily lives because everybody's daily life looks different. Okay, the next question. High impact exercise is chronic pain's worst enemy. This is false. This is not necessarily, right? Let's talk about exercise in general. You are so well protected by your pain when causing tissue damage. Your body will alert you much sooner than having damage, right? So we can get that out of the way. Our brain does not let us just do whatever we want until we cause damage to our body. It alerts us before that, and it alerts us with pain. If you've had pain for a long time, your brain is going to alert you sooner and sooner and sooner. And that's why we feel more sensitivity or we're more easily triggered over time. But you can be sore and still safe. You can hurt and still be safe. Sore and hurt don't always necessarily mean harm or damage. People often think that soreness or pain that comes with exercise means that they've caused damage to their body. They think it hurts, so I must be damaging my body, or I keep injuring myself. And as a result, I often see these people stop undertaking healthy activities or they reduce their activity levels completely. Now, again, the nuance here is this. Should you jump from a cycle of inactivity to high impact exercise? No, you need to build your tolerance. You need small but mighty experiences with movement and exercise that send new messages to your brain saying, movement feels good, I can move this way, and I'm a little sore but safe. So for example, if I were to engage in a regular old Pilates class when I haven't done any exercise at all, that is not something that's going to be a great experience for my brain. It's not going to feel very safe, right? But if I can sit and just twist my body from side to side, or move my head from side to side, or roll my head a little from side to side, or any of these small movements that might naturally be part of a typical day, if I can find some movement, and it could be as small as that, that provides a good experience with movement, this is basically a dose of medicine for your brain. Okay, the next question. Treating the anatomical problem, weak muscle or movement issue is sufficient. And this is something that people always used to say true, but I know that you're here because it hasn't been sufficient. People experience pain differently and to different degrees, depending partly on psychological, social, and other biological factors. And if we only treat the biological, if we only the treat the anatomical issue, the weak muscle, if we only give medicine or do procedures, then we're missing the other 2/3 of the problem. If pain is biological, psychological, and social, and we're only treating the biological, we're missing two huge parts of the pain problem. Next question. There are numerous causes for ongoing pain. This is true. People experience pain differently to different degrees, depending on their different factors, their different biological, psychological, and social factors. Some kinds of pain also result from the central nervous system. And people can have pain where an issue is seen on a scan, and people can have pain where we're not really sure where this started, or people can have pain after a particularly stressful period of life, or people can have delayed pain and have had traumatic experiences in childhood. There are so many ways and reasons that pain can show up. Okay, next question. Stressful thoughts and emotions can greatly impact pain levels. This is true. If we think about the volume control on your phone, we can think of these factors as turning up the volume on your pain. Certain things can dial up and down your pain. So think about a time when you were getting coffee with a friend, maybe you were pleasantly distracted, you probably had dialed down pain. But if you can think of a time when stress or emotions were high, like maybe your in-laws were coming into town, or you had this like really stressful presentation or meeting come up, this will dial up pain for many people. Certain physiological techniques like deep breathing, for example, as well as cognitive and behavioral techniques can really help with learning how to dial down pain, but also to dial down a sensitive nervous system so it doesn't feel like it has to do so much to protect you. Okay, next question. Medications are the most effective treatment for long-standing pain. This is false. The same answer as before, because there are biological, psychological, and social factors that impact pain. If we only treat the biological with medicine, we're missing 2/3 of the problem. So this is why medication do not usually provide an effective enough solution for everyone, or a reliable and an effective enough solution for all people, because we can see that chronic pain is growing globally, and I think if medications resolve that problem, we wouldn't be seeing that. Okay, true or false? Being in nature can help ease pain. This is true. So distraction is one of the most powerful analgesics of all. And so maybe you've noticed that when you're in the flow of an activity, deep into a great book, engaged in a movie, or helping someone else, that you are not noticing your pain as much. Maybe it's not even there. It's a superpower and sort of like a cheap pain softener. When your brain is busy doing something else, it can momentarily stop making pain. And by using distraction, you can break up some of the constant pain signal firing that's happening in your sensitized nervous system. And some people find that not only does their pain soften when they're distracted, but that they move, think, and even breathe differently. And we know that stress is a significant contributor to pain. We also know that physical activity like walking can reduce stress. Again, there's nuance here. What does this look like for you in your unique day? But we know that in general, these things are true. Research has shown that being in nature, even looking at pictures of nature, can help ease stress. And in Japan, they call this forest bathing. And studies show that just 20 minutes in nature can lower levels of our stress hormone cortisol, as well as our blood pressure. All right, next question. The best way to avoid flare-ups is with rest. I had another question that was similar. The best approach is to totally avoid anything that triggers pain. I think that again, my answer to this is going to be false. And again, there's nuance here. For those that have been following, I'm sure you know by now that rest often results in deconditioning if we're doing too much of it. So rest is a great approach for acute pain, right? I break my arm and I need it. I can't really use it. I need to rest it to heal. But when we've had pain for 6 months or longer and we rest for an extended period of time, this really isn't great for our body. It tells our brain that movement isn't a safe thing to do, and our brain gets more protective over it. But also, our body becomes more tense, our muscles more stiff, our body becomes deconditioned, meaning more weak, so that we're able to tolerate less and less movement over time. So if I'm resting for a long period of time and then I try to do something I haven't done in a while, my brain is going to protect me much sooner with pain than it would have before. And deconditioning really can make normal daily activities harder to do and much more prone to cause pain because your muscles are weak and tense. So the error here is often resting too much with chronic pain. We have people on the other side of the spectrum, though, that will push through and keep doing stuff. They find themselves in a cycle of overactivity and a flare up and eventually in a crash. So the extremes are not what we want, right? A flare up really is simply an overprotection mechanism that tells you that you ventured a bit too close to your body's tolerance, not necessarily that you went over it or damaged something. Your brain ramps things up to keep you out of trouble, not to tell you that you've been in trouble. What I mean is that people often misinterpret flare ups. They think flare ups mean that something very bad is happening in their body. Flare ups can be distressing, and so they send people into a spin. They often have people heading back to their doctor, or they start a new treatment, or they see a new provider. And I love talking about flare ups because I think once you understand what they are and why they show up, like what caused your body to wind up to this flare up, they start to lose their power, and they're shorter and they're not as bad. Um, they're good to avoid, and they can be avoided using a specific technique done in a certain way called pacing, and designing your day in very specific ways, which I talk people through in my program. But if we're talking about, resting as an approach to chronic pain or pushing through as an approach, both extremes are never helpful for pain. And finding something in the middle, which is what I teach women how to do in my program, is going to be much better at getting you doing the things that you love, but without triggering the flare ups that are so distressing. Okay, next question. If no one can figure out your pain, then it isn't real. Of course, this is false. And if you've ever felt this way in your treatment appointments, I am so sorry that that's been your experience. And unfortunately, it's all too common that we go to the doctor, we have scans, they tell us everything looks like it should, or that the results don't explain the symptoms. And I've seen so many people who have had this experience. But remember, you and I can have the same x-ray, even if they do find something, right? We can have the same x-ray. And my x-ray and your x-ray say that we have mild arthritis. And remember that the level or the presence of any damage, and by the way, arthritis isn't necessarily a damage or disease process. It's often a process of aging, like gray hair on our head. The presence of that is not what determines how much pain you have. And any provider who has made you feel this way is either approaching pain in an outdated way or not worth returning to. Because if you and I have the same results of our x-ray and it says we have mild arthritis and my pain is off the charts and you have no pain at all, what accounts for those differences? And if your doctor is not looking into you as a whole person, your unique biological, psychological, and social factors that are creating your pain experience, then they are not worth returning to, and they're practicing in a really outdated way. All right. Next question. Chronic pain is treatable, so you have to learn to live with it. This is false. Sorry, the question was chronic pain isn't treatable, so you have to learn to live with it. This is false. I do not believe this to be true. And for a long time, the focus was on helping people just manage their pain, right? Because we did really think it couldn't be cured. Chronic pain management, such as learning coping skills, learning how to pace your day, is definitely a big part of living with chronic pain. These approaches can reduce chronic pain. But there are effective treatments out there that not only help reduce people's pain, but can help them overcome it completely. And I don't want you to lose sight of this. Can chronic pain be cured? The answer is yes, but of course that's complicated. The bottom line is that the brain can be trained away from pain, just like it became trained to be overprotective and create more pain than we needed. But it's not a quick fix. It can be a complex journey to retrain your brain and overcome pain because there are so many factors that are unique to you and that you need to take into account. So it's basically an ongoing commitment to learn about pain, learn about your own factors that influence your pain, and then learn techniques that you can implement in your unique life and context in the long term. And again, we can get the information, right? We can learn more about our own pain, but how do we apply what we learn in our day-to-day lives? How do we turn that learning into change in our actual experience? And that's where something like a personalized guidance or personalized program can really be helpful for you. Okay, next question. If something hurts, it always means harm or that you're doing damage. So the reality is that while pain usually starts out as a tissue injury, sometimes, right? Rarely does your pain heal and go away as quickly as your tissues actually heal. So we might still have hurt, but we no longer have the harm of the tissues in our body. Most tissues heal within 3 to 6 months. And so hurt beyond that often doesn't mean that there's damage or harm. And even if there wasn't like a structural cause that someone found for your pain, this is still the case that you hurt and it's not necessarily meaning harm or damage. And so this is not me saying that pain is all in your head. I mean, yes, it is in our brain, but not in the negative context that we often take that statement. You are not Right. So I'm not saying that you are making up your pain. I will never say that, and I never think that. But your brain is generating your pain, and that's how pain works. And I provide a foundation for this in my program. Pain is an experience created by the brain in response to things happening in our body, things happening in our environment, our feelings, our thoughts, emotions, social context, our unique lives, and all of the things, all of the memories, all of the thoughts. It's so unique to you that it's not possible to cookie cutter our way out of pain. But the question is, if something hurts, does it mean harm? And even though your pain is real, it doesn't mean that it's damaging you or causing harm. It's just your brain's alarm system being a bit overprotective, and we need to calibrate this. We need to refine it a bit so it's working in a less overprotective way again. But all pain is pain. There's no more real pain than anything else. All pain is pain, all pain is real, and all pain can change. And so I'm going to tell you a story, and this is a pretty common story in the pain world, but it's called The Tale of Two Nails. And I think the best way to paint the picture of the relationship between tissue injury and how all of our personal factors can impact pain is these two separate case studies involving nails. So the first tale is a story from 1995. There was a British construction worker that jumped down from a ledge and looked down to see a 6-inch nail sticking through his boot. And he had immediately started to experience severe pain. He was rushed to the ER. Upon arrival, any small movement of the nail gave him such severe pain that they had to sedate him with fentanyl and other medications. But once they carefully removed his boot, they found that the nail actually didn't go through his foot. It went between his toes, and there was no tissue injury at all to his foot. Now, this is a person who, like, they're wiggling the nail, they're working with the boot, and he's experiencing extreme pain. His brain is protecting him because there's a nail in your foot. And then the nail had gone between his toes and there was no tissue injury at all. So in this way, hurt did not necessarily mean there was harm or damage. Pain can be super tricky sometimes because, again, our brain is creating this experience to protect us. Our brain is saying, excuse me, you have a nail in your foot. We need to just stop everything. This hurts, right? He had severe pain with zero tissue injury. His pain was pain. Of course, his pain was real, but his pain was driven by fear, context, and not by a tissue injury. Okay, here's the second tale. In 2007, a case study was released describing a construction worker who had unknowingly shot a 4-inch framing nail into his head, and he had sworn he saw the nail go into the wall and thought his discomfort was just the result of the nail gun kind of kicking back to his face. He felt like he just had sort of like a nagging toothache. And 6 days later, he went to his dentist, and his dentist took an x ray, and only then was the nail found. He had minimal pain with severe tissue injury and threat to his life. His mild pain and attributing it to a simple toothache was driven by his environment, context, lack of awareness of harm, rather than actual significant tissue injury and potential like threatening harm. So again, pain can be tricky, and our brain is just doing its best to take all of this information in and create an experience that's appropriate for keeping us protected. Sometimes it doesn't predict very well. It's basically a best guess scenario by our brain. And I know you're here because you've had pain for a long time now. By now, I know you know there's no magic wand or special procedure that's going to take it all away. It's a complex problem that can be solved, but only with patience, persistence, willingness, openness, and even better with some guidance and support. It's a journey, it's not a quick fix. And that journey looks different for everyone. And the first step is increasing knowledge and having a good understanding of your own pain cycle, why you hurt, how you got to this place that you are. It's not your fault. Validation, how pain works, how to start retraining the brain so that you can send it messages of safety. And in the first 4 weeks of my Breaking Through Pain program, we spend a lot of time exploring this. I provide pain neuroscience education. This is truly research and science-backed information based on intense study of chronic pain because people really are trying to figure this out, believe it or not. And we talk about your own story. We spend a lot of time reflecting on your story, what the language has been, how you talk about it, how you're experiencing that, how it shows up in your body. And we're just basically setting a foundation, a really firm and strong foundation to empower you and to help you understand why you hurt, why you still hurt after all of these years of having pain, and why that's not your fault, but also that you actually have a lot of power. Most people don't realize how much power they have to overcome this. And then we move toward the next step, which is to recognize that overcoming pain does involve venturing back out into the world, testing boundaries a bit, exploring all parts of your life, including some things that you used to enjoy. We have to give the brain new experiences in order to retrain it. We need to test the waters, challenge your thoughts, send safety signals to your brain through your experience, and you'd be surprised at what you can achieve a little at a time. And I guide people through this exact process because I know from experience how difficult it is and what the roadblocks are that get in the way, and how important support is, because again, we can take in the information, we can learn, and I know you're all trying so hard to learn, but it's really hard to apply that learning to our day-to-day life. So, for me, example, I'm a mom. I've got two young kids. They require a lot from me. I'm working. I try to stay on top of movement and my health, and I have a house to keep clean and a husband who works long hours for his job. And how do I apply these things when I have all of this to do? And sometimes I'm the only one home with the kids, right? I couldn't figure that out on my own, and I don't expect you to figure it out on your own. How do we take what we learn and apply it in the actual moment to moment, hour to hour, day by day process of our lives? That's the part that I like to think that I can offer you that nobody else is offering you. Being able to get into the nitty gritty of what that looks like. And I do have a program for this, as you probably know by now. And if you found yourself maybe stuck in a cycle of underactivity or a cycle of overactivity where you're pushing through and you're crashing, or you've become deconditioned because you're really afraid to move, this course is for you. This program is for you. It goes into the foundations, the fundamentals, how to recalibrate your nervous system, the art of designing your day to reflect what you really want, how to grow from that, how to manage all of the barriers that can get in the way of trying, and then how to do what you want and be productive in a sustained way without the interference of flare ups. If this is something that you're curious about, I welcome you to book a discovery call with me. It's free, it's 15 minutes, it's no pressure at all, just to kind of talk a bit about your pain, strategize what you've been told, what you're experiencing now, what your life looks like, and how do we take all of that information and form a recovery plan for you. So if this is something that you're curious about, I invite you to respond me in the chat to this of this event, or send me a direct DM and I will send you my calendar link and we can totally get on a call and just chat it through. Otherwise, I look forward to continuing this educational journey with you. I will continue to do as many live trainings as I can so you can catch the live version or the replay. But thank you so much for being here today. Please be kind and gentle to yourselves, and I'll see you next week for the next training. Talk to you all soon. Have a great day.